So after a couple days of travel, here we are at mile zero on the Potomac River, ready to start the C&O Canal Towpath trail. You kind of have to loop around, but then you're right along the canal in Georgetown. It's really cool along here. It just feels very historic with the walls, the old canal still watered, the buildings and the locks. We actually popped up a set of stairs and bought a cup of coffee and some pastries before we got moving more. It's really surprising how you don't have to get that far outside of DC or the Georgetown area before it feels like you're way out there. I looked at the satellite map, and for part of the way there is still like housing and stuff on the other side of those trees, but you don't feel it or see it when you're riding. Also, the surface here, I hear this talked about a lot, is one of the rougher parts. It's a little bigger chunk than your typical bike trail, but if you're riding anything over 38, you should be fine. You could ride it even smaller. I was on 2-inch tires. I think the widest of the group, Brad, was on 42s and no trouble. One thing I was surprised by right away is how beautiful the Potomac River is. I just had no idea. And we did take the advice that people had given us to stop in Great Falls. You can lock up your bike, take a little hike, and see the beautiful waterfalls out there. You'll see that in a minute. Here's one of the locks. It's amazing that a lot of them still have the gates on it. This one, you can see they're in a little disrepair, but it's still watered. Being from a canal town myself, our canal is just not in this kind of shape here as it is outside DC. That's our buddy Gabriel, who joined us for about the first 20 miles of the day. And here we are visiting Great Falls. It's so impressive. There's even a part of Great Falls you get to first that's not the main waterfall. Like we saw this, I felt like it was something you see in Colorado or out west, or maybe the Finger Lakes, even if you're thinking of the eastern side of the country. But super, super beautiful. It was fun to hang out and take photos like this and check it all out. We also met a couple other cool bike guys along the way. That's where Gabriel broke off. We refilled our water, rinsed off our faces. It was almost 100 degrees this day, so quite warm, but almost everything is in the shade. And, when you're moving on the bike, you're getting that nice breeze. Along the locks, it's really cool because a lot of the lock tender houses, and I think almost all of them for the first, maybe 50-60 miles are still there, and you could actually rent them. They have them set up at different points in history, so the amenities vary based on the lock tender house and how they've set it up, but pretty neat that exists. These are the aqueducts you go over. There's a bunch of aqueducts that you cross as you ride this trail. The aqueducts would have been where the canal boats actually went over bridges, pretty unique. Some of them you ride over the bridge, some of them you actually go, they've been restored and you kind of go along the edge. It's different in each situation. This was our first lunch stop of the trip in Whites Ferry. Gabriel told us he was like to keep an eye out for it. He was like, that's kind of one of the only spots on the first day to stop for some food. But there was a cool cafe here. They had good cans of craft beer. The sandwiches were really good. So it's a cool stop. It's also the site of, I think, the last cable pulled ferry in the country. So if you're into that kind of history stuff, it's pretty unique. And then it was back out on the trail after, a little break. Our first day, we were doing about 65 miles. I think that includes a couple miles from our Air BnB to get to the trail and then loop around, like I said. Oh, wow. So here's another one of the aqueducts fully restored, as you can see. Well, restored to the point except for having water in the canal there. These are pretty cool to see because none of the aqueducts here at home exist along the Ohio and Erie Canal. So it was something that I thought was pretty unique. Here we are cooling off at one of the wells. There are wells with campsites that you could ride up to or walk up to, hike up to every about 10 miles. There's a porta potty, one of these wells, and then fire pit and access to the river. Those last few photos there were us taking our photos with the mile markers that matched our age. Buddy William LeBron, who did the trail last year and follows this channel, mentioned that's a thing people do, so we did it. Here we are entering the town of Brunswick. They had a little festival going on, and we went to a brewery they had in town, grabbed just a snack. It was getting later in the day, and we didn't have that far to go, but we did need a little bit of a break. So went and sat inside and just kind of enjoyed the music going on. I think we had a pretzel, and we each had a beer. So good little stop along the way. before we got back on the trail to finish the ride. Our destination on this night was Harpers Ferry, a place that I've long wanted to check out. Turned out to be really beautiful right as you rolled into the area. You do have to haul your bikes up some steps to get to this bridge here. I obviously didn't film it because I had a full loaded down bike in my hands trying to go upstairs, but totally worth it. We picked out a restaurant called the Rabbit Hole that we wanted to check out. You have to climb, as you could see Ben doing here, to get up there, but totally worth the climb. We had a great time at the spot. Really cool owner. Nerded out a little bit about John Brown. If you don't know John Brown, you should look him up. There's an Akron connection as well, which is where I'm from. So anyways, this is our ride to the campground. And we were able to take a route that you wouldn't be able to take in your car to get there. It was this old like access road along railroad tracks. So it was kind of cool to get there. We got in our tents and it actually rained from the moment we got in our tents right until we got out of our tents in the morning. So we were super lucky. We never actually got wet. Of course the camping stuff was a little damp, but that's how it goes. We stopped here to take some pictures on our way back towards town. We did spend a decent amount of time this second morning in the town checking out Harpers Ferry, which, I think everyone enjoyed, but something I definitely wanted to do. We actually did climb up farther into town. There's a lower town down by the river and a higher town. I really wanted to see John Brown's fort. That's where he holed up after he raided the federal arsenal. And, some people consider it the first battle of the Civil War. So then I think we spent, at least an hour or two riding around the town. We had some breakfast in Harpers Ferry and stuff like that. Took some photos, all this stuff. You could see how just pretty it is here in the mountains. The river's pretty again and all that stuff before we were back cruising down the trail. Another warm day, but tree cover and, like I said, a little bit of a breeze. Trail wasn't too bad through here. You could tell it must have stormed farther through here, as we did have to, avoid a couple down trees. And there were some puddles we were pointing out and going around, but nothing compared to what I've heard people talk about when they ride it in the spring. I guess if it rains a lot, it could really get slow going out there. Our buddy Stu, I just ran into him the day before I'm recording this, and he told me how they rode it in the spring and there were parts that were almost unrideable. Even parts of the path that right here, the river must have flooded over and just dumped a ton of stuff up here. He said they couldn't smoothly roll through here. So that would stink. For us, we had perfect weather and it was beautiful. And this is one of the most unique parts of the trail, I believe, riding along this concrete path with these beautiful views of the river. There was that dam you saw, and there's another dam. I believe they were feeder dams for the canal back in the day, but they made it so there's people out here boating and kayaking and swimming. One thing, though, they are working on part of that, so there is this detour. The detour was kind of, we were saying almost a nice break from the trail when you're just riding a trail for a while, but there are some hills, so if you're going out there this summer and expecting a totally flat experience, that won't be the case, but I don't know, for our group, wasn't a big deal. There's one off-road steep climb, but then it's just country roads. Then we're back on the trail. You can see here now it's almost like a double track style trail. Again, nothing too rough for, we're all riding gravel bikes. I'm riding a vintage mountain bike, so no trouble for us. I don't think I'd want to attack this trail on a road bike. You'd have to pay too much attention and all that, but, to each your own on that. This is another campsite we were just looking at, and I was mentioning before how you kind of have river access, the fire pit, or a potty well. I think if I did the trail again, that would be something I would consider, is just maybe more winging it and just stopping at those campsites, knowing that they're every 10 miles. The reason we didn't do that is we tend to roll in later, spend a little time in the morning. We like to check out towns, as we were showing, spend some time at breweries, just explore. Here we are checking out another brewery. This one was a few miles off the trail, so we went out of our way to get to it, checked it out, went back, and all that. So that was kind of our apprehension. So we just wanted to book ahead of time and know that we had places lined up. That's how you have to do things. You have to live and learn. I know people did give us some good advice saying you can do that. We're planners. Not that I wouldn't do a trip that I was winging more, but we had deadlines and people had to be back at work. We had our train tickets and all that. So another really cool dam here, another cool spot to just, take in the scenery, another cool bartender's house up there. Just really impressed with the history and the beauty of the C&O Canal Trail. And I think that's part of what I'm saying. The rustic part of the trail doesn't bother me. It just, to me, it kind of adds to it. I know that's a negative to some people, but again, we were lucky with the weather and we were doing it in summer. So maybe that's what colors my perspective on enjoying it like this. Yeah, here we are zooming around another one of the old locks. Just, yeah, really pretty. Ben chose to go over the top of this one while we went down along the bottom. But, yeah, fun. I get asked this all the time, so I guess it's worth mentioning. I haven't done the actual math, but I think we average about 12 miles an hour on a tour like this, something fairly flat. We did do some climbing, and obviously you'll see later in the Gap video that, you have to climb up to the Continental Divide, but just to let everyone know, that's about what we are moving at. When we're feeling good, sometimes maybe we pick it up a little bit. Maybe other times we're having conversation and slowing down, but I think that's a pretty good average. Our stop for this evening was outside of Hancock. So we rode through town, but our Airbnb was up a pretty good climb. We went with an Airbnb on this night just because our original campsite got canceled. We booked it on Hip Camp and they canceled it on us. So it was nice though to get showers. We used the washing machine, anyone who wanted to wash anything. So, mix it up. It's your vacation. Do it however you want. I don't understand why people think like there's some kind of award for roughing it. If you want to personally challenge yourself and rough it like all the time, do it. We didn't mind having a spot to take showers and all that. So the next day, this was actually the 4th of July. We stopped at that little market to load up because it was right in Hancock, well, on the outskirts, but it was one of the only things that we saw that was going to be open. So we knew we had to plan ahead for food and stuff like that. We knew that there was a chance that during the day there wouldn't be much. And here we're actually cooking camp meals at our state campground here. I rode down to check out the river. There was a boat launch and all that, full-on campground. And it was pretty cool. The next challenge was that the Paw Paw Tunnel is one of the longest tunnels on the canal, the longest tunnel on the canal, but it's open, but the approach is not open. So you have to go up a detour, and you basically have to go up the mountain that the Paw Paw Tunnel was designed to go through. And this is brutal. I don't know how people with e-bikes that are fully loaded are doing it. Me and my buddy Stu, again, were talking about that. Here's the tunnel. Actually, we backtracked just to see it. But yeah, that is not an easy detour to do. Ben rode the entire thing. I had to put a foot down on 2 spots, and unless you're a super strong rider or you're on a fully unloaded bike, it's like mountain biking, and even going down the other side was intense. But you get amazing views, so all in all, probably a little bit worth it. The end of this day, here we are back out there. What is it, 52 miles in? I think this was more like a 70-mile day for us, but we were cruising along right here pretty good. People said we were doing this trail backwards, because we're going against the Potomac and up the canal locks, but the canal is so flat, the angle is imperceptible. And then this was our campground for the next night. And this is that's Cumberland in the distance. So we stayed just right outside of Cumberland. We rode in for dinner. We set up camp, rode in for dinner. Brad did not come with us because he wasn't feeling well. We thought maybe it had something to do with the Paw Paw Tunnel climb and all that. But by the time we were leaving, he said he was actually feeling feverish. So here we are rolling in. We were going in for dinner. We found a little bar that, was open on 4th of July, thank God, not a lot open. And then we were rolling back as all the crowd was starting to assemble to see the fireworks. Heading back, we had been texting with Brad, and it started to seem like maybe COVID was rearing its ugly head. We did get back to the campsite, sit down, got to watch the fireworks going off everywhere. But Brad stayed in his tent feeling very unwell, and it was decided we would run into town and get him a test in the morning and find out if he would be able to join us on the rest of the trip as we hit the Gap Trail. That'll be part 3.